Welcome back to the Start and Scale podcast. I'm your host, Jack Brandwood. This is the place where we speak with people who are starting and scaling tech businesses. We'll be talking with founders, investors, and everyone in between. This week, I sit down with Stuart Warrington from Envoke Demos. Our conversation ranges from the value of video games, breaking into new sectors, and how to go about finding an investor.
I think there's a perception that as an economy shrinks, then investment becomes more difficult, but that's not actually true, because the only way money makes money is if you put it somewhere.
Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the episode. So Stuart, thanks for coming on.
That's all right.
Yeah, how was the journey to Manchester?
All right. I was just explaining to your colleagues there that I bought a big stupid car and it's left-hand drive, and parking in a multi-story car park in the middle of Manchester. It's just obscene when I'm reaching over to get the ticket out, and my knee goes on the horn, and I was just the horn's going off in the car. I'm grabbing this thing, and I'm in an obnoxious car as it is. I'm like, I look like the worst person ever. So yeah, other than that, it was fine.
Good. Well, glad you came. And look, I always like to start these things off with a really kind of deep but very simple question. Who is Stuart Warrington?
Oh, big question. Yeah, just weird they even had to start it. I was, which is unfair. Have been a filmmaker for 20 years and got into it purely by accident. And from getting into it, went from straight up editing to doing camera work to doing animation. And that gradually grew to me making video games as well. And largely, I'm a person who my wife will describe me as a magpie, because I'll just see something and go like, I want to make that now. And sometimes that is challenging. So, who is Stuart Warrington? What am I? I'm a guy who makes things. That's it, right? And whatever I want to make, I'll try and make it. That's what spun out all of my companies and everything that we've done. Is like, here is a desire to make something, and now here is a desire to make money off that thing as well. So that's who I am. Quite a loquacious person. I am trying my hardest to be less sweary, because I'm quite a sweary and animated person as well. But yeah, I'm God, saying you're a creative is such a weird thing, but that is it. I just make things and then try and work out how I can make that my job. That's who I am.
Love that. That's a really good. That should be a LinkedIn bio.
Well, it was for a bit. It said something like that, and then I went to a LinkedIn course, and they went, "Get rid of that, because nobody cares about that." So I went to this weird LinkedIn seminar where somebody told me. I thought it was going to be someone telling me how the internet worked, but it wasn't. It was quite useful. They said, all that stuff on your LinkedIn profile, maybe tweak it a little bit. So saying I am someone who makes things is too generic, because people are like, what do you do, make a wall? Like, no. Yeah, so you need to be a bit more focused on it.
Okay, fair enough. Well, look, another awkward way to start a podcast is our vision is Tact is trying to create a world where everyone gets their dream job.
Yeah.
You weren't always Stuart of Envoke. Could you please draw what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Yeah. The version of something that I thought I wanted to be is quite easy to draw, because I was fairly sure I was going to be 007, right? So I was fairly sure that I was going to be that. But it turns out that wasn't ever going to be the case. So then I'm going to draw it just like I'm just drawing emojis. So I then wanted to be, I'm going to do this as a bunch of eggs and some sausages in there, like mouths all of a sudden. I wanted to be a chef.
Nice.
And that was quickly sort of vetoed, because I was like, it's quite stressful, and you're a kid, you're like, I'll be a chef. And then you realise, you see a chef do their job, and you're like, holy crap, that's like a lot of hard work, and you cry hot all the time. So then I wanted to be, this is going to be the worst thing I'm going to draw, right? And then I wanted to be a vet for a while, and I was like, God, you need to know a lot of maths. 0 plus 1 equals, this might be a dog, but let's just pretend it's any generic 4-legged animal, but you need a lot of maths. And I was like, I was just so bad at maths. And they said, look, if you want to be a vet, you have to at least get an A in maths at A level. I was like, well, that's not going to happen. I'm horrendously dyslexic, right? So anything to do with school was like, any pathway you went down, it was like, you're going to need to be more academic to do that. And that was really challenging, because basically when you grow up in the age I was, I'm 40, so I was born in 83. And when you got told you were dyslexic, you had to be statemented, and it meant that you were restricted massively in what you could and couldn't do at school. So my mum, to her credit, didn't have me statemented, but knew I was dyslexic. But any career path that you wanted was like, you have to be better at maths, you have to be better at English. I was like, well, those are the things that I literally can't do. It wasn't until after school that I realised that the only thing that actually gave me any level of satisfaction, and people couldn't tell me that I needed to be more academic to do it, was I'll just do that and do a big circle. And then it was filmmaking, and that was it. Because filmmaking, you could just pick up a camera and shoot and edit it, and no one could tell you what to do. Whereas everything else I tried to do, people said, you can't do that because you're not good enough at maths, you can't spell, you can't write, you struggle to read. So after all of that, I was like, the only thing that gave me the satisfaction was filmmaking.
Wow. This is the most eclectic the drawer we've had.
Sorry, yeah.
Anyone, thank you.
Yeah. It was meant to be a dog. I don't know why it's squinting. I don't know why it's meant to be like I said, I'm possibly need Photoshop more than I let on to draw stuff.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, my colleague, my co-founder, Tom, he's dyslexic, different age, obviously. So it must have been, and he said it was tough when he was in school. So I can't imagine what it was like back then.
I've got an older brother who's 2 years older than me, right? That in itself, for anybody who's a younger sibling, is quite a difficult thing because everything you're doing, which is like quite major, they did it already 2 years before and they're currently doing the next thing. And that was stuff that I held on to for far too long. Like, you're doing your options and you're struggling with them, and your older brother is doing his GCSEs. Well, all the attention is going to be on the GCSEs because they've already done their options. And then you're doing your GCSEs and they're doing their A-levels. But, GCSEs have already been done. So you always feel, being dyslexic makes you feel sort of out of place in school anyway, because they'll go like, you can't read as well as everybody else, or you can't write as well as everybody else. And in my era, they would just put you in a class with other people who were the same as you, but then other people who had behavioural problems as well. So if you needed more attention, you didn't get any more attention because there's a person sat over there screaming and shouting who needs a different level of support. So it was, no one really understands how to work with someone who's dyslexic in the academic system because it's not built for someone to think differently. It's built for everyone to think in these straight lines. So you have all these things that compound you, and then you realise that actually, school isn't the be all and end all of everything. And when you get out of it and you get this ability to craft your own path, that's what really helped me. I will not be negative about the school system because it's not perfect, but nothing is, and it doesn't understand. You can't have a go at somebody for not understanding something. When you get out of that situation, if you're like me or like your business partner, when you get out of the situation, you suddenly realize you can find a path that you actually fit into quite well. It doesn't have to be school. I'm sorry, I'll get off this soapbox as well at some point, but that was largely the thing for me. It was like getting out and getting a camera in my hand meant that, like I said, that was a language that you could understand, whereas English and maths and science and all stuff is just not a language you could really understand. And if you think of things as languages that you can understand, it sort of starts to make a little bit more sense.
No, I get it. So how did you get from that to where you are now?
I got into making films, and then went to uni, got kicked out of Salford University, which is difficult to get kicked out of. Getting kicked out of certain universities is probably easier. Getting kicked out of Salford is quite hard because at the time I went there, and this is going to sound negative, it felt like they would let anybody in, and then to get asked to leave was was quite a challenge. But what happened really quickly was this transition from film to digital was happening, and the university wasn't keeping up. So I was just getting more and more frustrated with it. Managed to get one of my lecturers she had a company called Ripraw, a woman called Alison Surtees. She's still in Manchester now. So she said, "You know how to edit, don't you?" And she confused me for somebody else. And I just went, "Yeah." And she gave me a laptop and there was a job, and she said, "Get on editing that." So you got to take these opportunities sometimes, right? Yeah. Did that, started editing for her for quite a while, then got with a woman who became pregnant, and that really made me stop being such a sort of a dosser and treating it as like a joke. And was like, I was 23, and we found out she was pregnant when she was 5 months pregnant. So it was like, you need to focus now because you're more than the sum of your parts, right? So you've got this other person to look after. So I really focused then on like, I need to turn this into a career rather than something I was just doing by chance. And then once you do that and you commit to it, then it went from having this responsibility to make sure that I earned money every month to pay for the family, and then went off in a direction of I need to do this full time rather than doing it freelance. Got a full-time job, and it went from there. And I got a bunch of full-time jobs doing progressively more and more sort of important, in inverted commas, like editing jobs. So that's the start of the journey.
It was actually quite a high level view, really, I think, of your history. And you were motivated to make this a full career initially because you had a family.
Yeah. As someone who possibly needed to be pushed, but found it impossible to be pushed in any direction, needed something like so external but so important to push you, which was having a child, having a daughter. It was like, you need to make some money because you've got to pay the bills, feed everybody. You've got to go out and make a career of it. And that gives you focus, which is sometimes one of the most difficult things to have, especially when you're 23. You're focused on having fun, and that's fine. But to be focused on, actually, no, we need to go out and make a proper thing. If you're going to do it, my old man always used to say, you've got shit or get off the pot, right? So it's time to crack on. And that's from basically 23 to 30, I worked for other people. I was like, I need to make a career, but I need to learn as much as I possibly can about this. And then I had this goal, which was I wanted to own my own company before I was 30. Like these weird arbitrary things that you just put on yourself, especially when you're not even 30 yet. You're like, I need this thing. It's like, well, why? Well, you realise it was because I was really struggling to take instruction from anybody else, because you just see people and you're like, you don't know what you're doing, I know what I'm doing. It's like, well, go and prove that you know what you're doing. So that's how I ended up at 30 starting Superla, which is the video arm of the business that we've got at the moment.
And the business right now, Envoke Demos.
Envoke spun out of Superla because the way it works, Superla started about 11 years ago, and it was film and animation. That's what we did, because that's all I knew. But during the path of doing Superla, we started to get asked quite a lot for games. We make videos for businesses. We work for like Santander and O2 and people like that, right? And then they were asking, can you do any gamification? And same sort of thing. I just said, yeah, we can. I didn't know the first thing about it. You just go and find people you can bring into the business to help. Calculated that risk of going like, we will not mess this up if we just put the right people in place. Always wanted to make a video game. So went down that path, did a couple of small video games for companies, and then showed that to an agency boss who worked with this is really like, sounds really like broken as a journey. I'd be better if I draw it out. Made a bunch of video games, showed that to an agency boss who had a customer called Thermo Fisher Scientific, who's a big biotech company, right?
Based in Cheshire, right?
They're everywhere, right? Basically, people go like, they're down the road. It's like, well, down the end of every road, right? They're the biggest biotech company in the world, and they had a problem that they said, we struggle to ship products. We don't struggle to, but it's expensive shipping products. So when we do a demo to somebody of these life sciences and biotech systems, the sort of things that go in labs, right? The one that we can all visualize is a PCR machine, right? Because we all got tested for COVID at some point and went on a PCR machine. They cost a lot of money to ship, to do a demo. They said, we're doing this to underqualified leads. So we want to put something in the way before we ship a product. And I said, you need to make a video game? And they're like, we don't want to make a video game. I said, you need to make a virtual demo tool. No, oh, we want that. I was like, it's the same thing. Call it what you want, but I'm going to do exactly this. I'm going to make you a video game, and I'm going to call it a virtual demo platform. And then we made it pre-COVID. Then COVID hit, and it became the most like important tool in their arsenal, a way to show products to customers anywhere around the world. And it was all by a chance meeting where somebody explained a problem, and I saw an opportunity and went, I can build that. So we went and built it.
Whoa.
So yeah, you just like calculated risk, right? That was all it was. Seeing a chance of going like, there is a solution that I can build that will mean that you can show products to people without ever having to ship anything. And it's called a video game. And these businesses don't want to make video games. So it's like, if you call it something else, they'll take it. That was what it was all spun out of.
Have you spoken to that person after the fact and said, by the way, this is just a video game, right?
Oh yeah, it's come up a few times. Yeah, and it comes up all the time actually when you're talking to people, because the platform's changed and grown. It's been going 4 years now. So Envoke is a platform that a virtual demo tool. It's grown and changed a lot, but it is still based on the same fundamentals that it is expensive to ship things, and this virtual demo experience means you don't have to ship things as much. when I speak to the people who originally spoke to about it, they are like, oh, so it is just a video game. Because now, 4 years ago, people didn't know about the Unreal Engine the same way they do now. But now when people see, like they watch Star Wars and all of the stuff around it, they know video games are sort of clawing their way into every single industry. So they're a bit more aware of it. Well, 4 or 5 years ago, nobody had a clue.
What's that video game that's like? It's super gruesome, but it's like with aliens.
Like every game is like that. Right? The barrier to entry with these things are that people, if you show somebody one of our demos, for example, some of our demos don't look as real as they could look. But the reason we don't go full photoreal like the Unreal Engine does is because accessibility is more important. So if I make your demo look photoreal and it looks incredible and it's nice and shiny and it's lit really nicely, the person you're selling to who's in a lab, who's in a basement with crappy internet, won't be able to see it. So we have to like balance our desire to make the best looking like Unreal, photoreal engine type thing to who you're actually going to go and show. You know, most people looking on their phone, you can't download that stuff on your phone. So you balance this stuff out all the time.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so the super realistic stuff is amazing, but the super realistic stuff takes super high-end tech to run it. So we have to balance that quite a bit.
And when you say balance, how do you mean?
So games taught us years ago about how, this is so nerdy, but like how efficient can you be to get the thing to look its best, right? In a really basic way, a PC just sort of lets information come in one way and lets it go out another way. But those things are a series of roads, right? If you want really like super realistic high-end stuff, you have to have a bigger motorway going into your processor to let the things go out the other side. Most people at work don't have that. They don't have super gaming rigs. They're not doing Twitch streaming. They've got a crappy 10-year-old ThinkPad that work's given them that's been in a warehouse for years, right? That hasn't got the same motorway system letting all the information in, right? So we have to make it efficient so that the information comes in gradually. So they get the same experience, but it's managed how we do that. And that's what my company does. Like we can talk about the platform and what it does for people, but ultimately it's like we make sure it goes into people's hands anywhere. And that's what proper game development teaches you. It's like memory management, right? It's how much power can you realistically push for your audience? Because you can push all the power in the world, but if nobody's going to be able to see it, what's the point? That's why game dev teaches you good, efficient ways of using a PC rather than just throwing everything at it. Did that make any sense?
It does. No, it does. And that's why I know that was a good explanation, because I don't know anything about that, but it does make sense.
Yeah.
So Envoke, been going for 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
Recently secured investment.
Yes. So about 4 months ago now, we took on a chunk of investment from the Mercia Group, which run the Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund.
Cool.
So we took that money on to accelerate the business.
Right. Why now?
That is a good question. Why now? Because it's come up quite a few times. So we started that journey 12 months before we got the money. Why now is actually why a year ago, because investment is brutal. Getting money off people, turns out getting money off people is quite difficult. And it is like, we could see that for it to grow and for it to become what it is becoming, I realistically couldn't strangle Superla's cash flow anymore, because Superla basically paid for most of this stuff, right? So the video side of the business, it does like videos and video games, right? So we'll do games in retail and we'll do films. And we'll do a lot of them. And I took all the money he was making and pumped it straight back into Envoke to make sure Envoke had the legs to survive and get to where it is now, where it's now, you know, got the foundation, it's growing. I couldn't keep on doing that anymore, because it was just like, this is either going to work or it's not, but I couldn't afford to keep on funding it anymore. And that became to the point, it was like, we need to go and get somebody else to pick up the tab to give us the money to grow, really. That was a year ago. And then everything changed. On that journey, things change a lot. When you go for investment as well, you know, they will give you the money when you need it the most, so they leverage the most out of you.
Sure, makes sense.
But it's the right time to grow, because we found an area of the market which is bigger than the original area of the market we went into. And that's really what we're using the money for. I'll explain that in a bit more sense. So we started out, we made the tool to mean that you didn't have to ship the product. So when you go to an event, for example, people go to these events for biotech and they'll ship 4 products. Well, if you use my tool, you can ship every single product because it's a digital companion of your device. That's what Envoke is. At its core, it is a digital twin of your product. And we looked at it from a marketing lens. We were like, this means that you can go to events with it. It means you can have it on your website. It means you can do these remote demos where you invite people in, but it was all marketing focused. And then over time, we've realized that actually because we're a SaaS model business, marketing sort of struggled to pay the bill every single year because marketing, you're marketers as well, right? We've got some marketers in the room. They want to pay for something once and then have it. So they pay for a video or pay for a pamphlet, right? They don't want to keep on paying for that every year. And with Envoke, you have to pay every year to keep it on. It means that you stay ahead of technology. Like it's on us to stay ahead of the curve. You don't have to. But their marketing budgets, they might spend a lot of money on a product one year, and the next year they shift focus so they don't got the same level of budget. We've found that Envoke's probably brightest future is to go into training and maintenance, because training and maintenance cost these businesses quite a lot of money. And Envoke, by being a digital companion, by being an exact replica of the tool but virtually, means that you can suddenly do all your training virtually, and you can start to do low-level maintenance virtually on the Envoke platform. So we've sort of shifted the business a little bit from pure sales and marketing to like post-sales now a little bit more. And that's largely what the money's been for, and we'll possibly be going for more because we've seen this huge market in training and maintenance. Way bigger than the sales and enablement bit as well.
That's mega.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. It's like, if you make a virtual version of your device, there was something, I read this book. So I used to be petrified of flying, right? This is going to sound tenuous, but go with me. And I read this book. Somebody said, the way to get over your fear of flying isn't to get drunk on every plane that you go on, because that's what I was doing. I was so terrified.
That's not the answer.
That's apparently not the answer. Somebody told me to listen to this book called Cockpit Confidential, right? And it's just and it's an audio book, and you just sit and listen to it, and it's about everything that's happening on a plane, and it helps you get over your fear of it. But he said something really interesting, which was the only reason you get on a plane is because the pilot that you trust knows what they're doing has spent X amount of thousands of hours in a simulator. And so they play a video game of flying, and that's why you trust them, right? They then are allowed, once they've done X amount of hours in a video game, allowed to fly a real plane. But every year they have to go back and redo the video game bit. They have to do the simulator. So I was like, well, why don't we do that for everything? Because for medical products and biotech products, they are quite complicated machines, and training people on them is quite a labor-intensive process. And the second you're training someone on a real machine, that real machine isn't making you any money anymore because you're training somebody. I was like, well, why can't we just take that methodology behind pilots in flight sims and bring it over to like biotech and medical and go, here's a virtual version, learn on that. So you're still making money on the real one, and you're not going to break the real one, you're going to break the virtual one. So that's where the business opportunities come up. So I'm like, there is an unmet need there because nobody wants to take the machine down to train people. So do it virtually.
That's a fantastic idea. When was the light bulb moment? How do you feel?
It was the first event I went to, AACC in Chicago. It was, I can't remember what any of the acronyms stand for, right? So don't quiz me on it. It's a life sciences event in Chicago. I was walking around and I was seeing that, Envoke really works for marketing. It's great. But what do we do post-sales? Is there a need for it? And as I talked to people, the biggest challenge that they were saying was, we haven't got enough people who understand how the machine works. So even if you can train somebody, finding somebody, you've got a machine there that's just for training, you still need somebody to train. Right? You still need a person there, a teacher there to train people. So it's like, my tool fixes that because you can do like 130 people at once around one virtual version of the machine, right? So that was the light bulb moment. I spoke to a few other people about it, and we've got this marketing company we worked with for quite a while in California, and he was thinking the same thing because he used to run the training and maintenance team at Thermo Fisher, and he was like, it is a big issue in the industry. It costs a lot of money to train and to fix machines. So if you can have a version where people at least pre-training and stuff like a way to get people just familiar with a device will save these companies millions. And that's why I was like, yeah, that's what Envoke does. So it was a great moment, but then it was like, oh crap, that's a lot of work to do to get it. Because when we're making a digital companion for marketing, you're only doing what marketing wants to say about the machine. Yeah. When you do it for training and maintenance, you're doing every single thing the machine can do. They're two very different things, right?
Hence why I need some more money.
More money, and well, the thing is, we could probably do it on the money that we've got as well. It's not that we need more. It's more that to scale it the way we want to scale it, we probably should be looking for more. I was convinced we would never go for any more money because you're not. You're like, we'll take this money and I'll be a millionaire. It's like, no, well, it doesn't really work that way. If we want the platform to scale into the areas that we know we need to get into, because we're just in biotech at the moment. Medical dwarfs biotech, right? Biotech's already like a 40 billion industry, and medical becomes like this $1 trillion industry, right? If we want to go into that space, we need to know what we've got is right and works. So we'll use biotech to move into that space. But there's only so much a team of 15 or 16 people can do. If you want to do it better and bigger, we need more money to grow it.
Yeah.
And this thing about scaling, right, with the business, if you scale, like scaling is a bit of a myth in that what doesn't scale is support. So if we do this platform that is going to train and maintain products, we'll need to have a bigger support team behind it. And support doesn't necessarily scale the same way.
Why?
Because you always need people, right?
And people are very bad at scaling, right?
Yeah. So like if you build a SaaS, like a tech product, and it's SaaS modeled and that's got loads of scalability in it, because like all you do is you put more people into it. When you put more people into it, you need to make sure that you're supporting those people more. So by you add 100 customers to your SaaS platform, right? You have to make sure that your training on that SaaS platform is up to scratch, right? But that also has to be constantly reviewed and changed based on your user experience. That user experience becomes this beast which has to constantly evolve, because you've put 100 people on and they wanted this. Now you're going to put 1,000 people on and they want this, and those paths always change. So it's not as scalable. Support isn't as scalable as people think, and it always sort of comes a bit of a cropper. So we're trying to make something. If we had a bit more money, we can come up with a plan that scales it a bit better. That's a rambly nonsense answer. I do apologize.
No, great answer. How did you find getting that first bit of money? How
really
was it?
hard.
Yeah.
Like really hard.
Why?
Because it just goes on forever, right? Raising money is a full-time job. So you better be prepared to not have a holiday, because you've got to carry on doing your full-time job whilst doing another full-time job, which is raising money. So we were pretty fortunate. I had this chance encounter. Like most of my life feels like it's a series of chance encounters, but that's what life is anyway, right? I complained to our solicitor, who we pay on a retainer for all this, because we've got so many licensing agreements in place with these customers. I complained to them that they weren't paying us enough attention. And in response, they invited me to a lunch and learn with like Taking Your Business Across the Pond, it was called. And in that room was somebody from Mercer Investment Group, a guy called Will. And during the lunch and learn and the conversation stuff, he said, this is what they do. They run the Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund. We go and meet him, and you get the usual thing when you go and meet investors. He's like, oh, look, just so you know, if it's a no, we're still here to support. We're still interested in it. And like, no, that's not true. But they say they are, so it's fine. And then you sit down and you start showing the platform and the clients that we've got and where the vision is. And suddenly I was like, you have something here. You've already made it. We just need to take it to market better. Because my go-to-market strategy was, do you want a virtual demo? That was it, right? You needed something a bit more concrete. But that happened last October. And then we put in fact, actually, the investment deck started 6 months before that. So it's 18 months, 6 months to get your investment deck up to scratch, and 12 months of pitching to people, But even when somebody says they're interested, there's still then due diligence. There's financial due diligence, tech due diligence. Your background, everything you've ever done, is pulled up. Make sure your social media accounts don't have just a bunch of shots of you smashed off your face, right? Make sure you project the version of the person you want to be that someone might invest in, because it will dominate your whole life for 12 months when you start that process. So it's tough. It's really tough. I think people watch Silicon Valley and believe that people are getting given term sheets. It's not that easy. It's really tough.
Is it, especially now, right? I guess you don't have anything to compare it to beforehand, do you? Really?
Not really. I know people. I've known lots of business owners who've gone through it, right? And none of them ever said it was easy, and they've gone through it for years. I think there's a perception that as an economy shrinks, then investment becomes more difficult, but that's not actually true, because people still have money and they have to put it somewhere. No matter how much the economy shrinks, people will still always need to put money somewhere, because the only way money makes money is if you put it somewhere. But getting money off people can possibly be a little bit more difficult, but it's never been easy. No one's ever like I said, this version of it, which is in TV shows and stuff, where people just get given this money and it's that easy, but it's really not. People with money and money to invest don't give it away easily, and they never have done.
Just more risk averse, perhaps.
There might be a deeper due diligence process, maybe. They might have a different portfolio. They might at one point have a certain type of portfolio they want to go for, and then they look at the market and go, that portfolio is no longer relevant, so they move somewhere else. So it might actually be that at one point your industry was easier to get money. The industry we're in, the biotech space, is constricted at the moment. So, an investor could look at that and go, well, your product, as good as it is, it's in an industry that's constricting, that's out of my control. So they might look at that and go, well, that's too risky. And they might look at something else like social media and go, well, that's not constricting at the moment, so let's put our money into platforms that support that. And that's out of your control. But you just have your focus and go, if you're doing something in the position that I was in, where we've built something and had customers and had a platform that could grow if it was supported, that put us in a slightly better position. But still, 12 months of brutal, constantly being asked for your pipeline, where you're like, why am I giving this person my pipeline when they've not invested in my company? Yeah. It's just really quite challenging and quite stressful. There's this weird bit when I went for a drink with a guy so we work with Santander quite a bit. This guy called Paul, who was like the head of internal comms, right? And he said, we should go for a drink when you finish. And I was like, yeah, okay, we've not managed to sync up yet to go for a drink. But he said to me, he'd done a week before I met him for lunch to talk about things. His other friend had just finished his investment round. Then they'd gone for a celebratory drink. And it'd been he thought the guy would turn up and he'd be bouncing off the walls. So it was like someone had cut the string from the back of him like a puppet, because he was just so beat. He'd got this thing he wanted, but it had beaten him to a bloody pulp to get it. So it's not always the most relieving thing when you get the money. You all celebrate it and put it on LinkedIn like you've won the world, right? But there is a part of you that's that was effing hard.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I've spoken to people who've gone through it, and that's a really good analogy. It's like someone's cut the strings off a puppet. Just
You feel as well there are times when you're just we can't keep on going down this path. We're going to need to look at other options.
Yeah.
Because it does, it takes your focus away from your business to a degree. And that's probably the biggest challenge is we got 1 million, right? And you look at it and go, could I have made 1 million in the year it took to get that 1 million? And you need to get those questions out of your head sometimes, because actually what we've got now, it isn't necessarily always about the money, it's about the support that comes with it. We have a backer that believes in us, that's pushing us. We have a board now. We've never had a board. It was just Stuart and his weird ideas, right? Now we've got Stuart and his business that needs to go in this direction. And that, in the same way, having a child gave me focus, suddenly having a board has given me focus in the same way.
Brilliant. Love that. Did you go VC or PE? VC. Any particular reason?
If you ask one set, if you ask a VC what it's like with private equity, they'll go, oh, private equity is awful. And it's vice versa, right? Private equity, we would have been more investors, right? We had a VC that took the whole round. So Mercy's just went, we'll just give you the money. And they actually we went from asking for $500,000 to being given $1 million. So, because they were like, will you take more money? Because they looked at our business and went, you need more than $500,000. Right? You always think, I'll give away less, I'll take less money. And they're like, absolutely not. If you're going to do this, here's a bigger pot of money. Go for it, go further, go and push the thing faster. And the VC supports us with that. If we had loads of smaller private equity things, I don't think we'd necessarily get the same level of support. We would probably be in more control, but like we were looking for the support as much as the money as well, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got us to take a chairman on, they got us to take a financial director on, and we have board meetings now every month, which I've never had before. Which is just like every single time, it's just like, oh, you're not making enough money. It's like, well, I bloody know that because I see it, but you know, not everything goes to plan. But we've got a board there that believes in us and supports us. So some months you miss your target, some months you exceed your target, right? And with a private equity firm, they would possibly not be as involved in that. They just want return and return and return. Whereas a VC is a bit more longer term thinking. That might just be my random opinion on it. It might not be true. You know, someone might, like I said, someone will say private equity is the best and someone will say VC is the best. You're doing a dance with the devil regardless. So just whichever one you feel comfortable with, do that one.
Yeah, good advice. Now you've had the investment and whatever you've got planned in for the next month or two. What's the plan over the next 12, 18 months? Have you got anything that we should be keeping an eye on?
It's the training and maintenance stuff. Yeah. It really is. Like, from a tech perspective, the point of coming and working with Envoke, the point of putting your products in Envoke is that we keep you ahead of the curve. So when Apple's glasses launch in January, their AR glasses, we will make sure that Envoke works on it. So if you want to use that in your lab or whatever, we'll make sure that Envoke works, because that's on us. We make sure Envoke works everywhere. That's a constant grind, right? Making sure that we're ahead of the curve with those things. Training and maintenance stuff is where we're going to be looking. That's where we're going to be pushing more. It's to give you the sort of rough sort of the reason we're going for it. If we stuck with marketing, we would have to put a lot more products in, right, to make the targets. With training and maintenance stuff, we don't have to put as many products in to hit the targets. We have a patent in Envoke, right? We have a bunch of patents on the tech, and it's a methodology of the way Envoke works. So because I came from a film background, it was really important to me that when people talk about their products, it's not just done the same way it would be if you read a pamphlet. It has to tell a story. And we created these things called story blocks. Right? So a story block can be pulled from into a storyline. And that's the way, like the brain of Envoke is this thing called a story block library. It's this library of content of everything you want to say about a product. So for marketing, it's maybe like 30 story blocks that they want to pull from to craft the marketing storyline. At the moment, most of the products that are in Envoke do that. They have just a marketing focus. There's 30 story blocks in the story block library, and you can put them in any order you want, right? And you can make as many storylines as you want. If you're going to a certain event and want to talk about it in this way, or you're going to do a more detailed remote demo, you talk about it in a different way. 30 story blocks in the story block library. With training and maintenance, if you put a product in, you're looking at closer to 400 to 500 story blocks. And so that's the big change for us in the next 12 months. We're building the systems that mean that we can, instead of doing 30, we can do 400 to 500 in a lot more efficient way. And it means that when customers put a product in, they can project onto it a little bit further rather than just, this is just marketing. They'll look at it and go like, no, this is everything pre-sales and everything post-sales. And that's what I think a platform like my platform has to do. If you put the thing in, it has to filter out to the whole bit of the business. So that's where we're really focusing, because we just know that training is an issue, maintenance is an issue, and marketing at times can, you know, if an economy is shrinking, marketing will get the budget cut, but they'll never really cut the training and the maintenance budget. That's why we're focused. We're like, that's in the next 12 months. That's what Envoke's going to be focused on. It's going to be like, you'll see it from our comms and stuff like that. It's all going to be about how games have taught us how to teach people how to use things. And that's what a lot of our focus is going to be, trying to get that game logic into training and maintenance the same way we did with marketing. Games did a couple of things that were really groundbreaking for when we started working in Envoke. Localization was the first thing, right? So games worked out that you could, if you're playing Fortnite in one country and you're playing Fortnite in another country, both people can play and have the game represented in their own language, right? And that was what a lot of our customers like. We want to break into the Japanese market. We want to grow more into Africa. I'm like, do the thing in Envoke, and then when you go more global, it's easy for us to change the language. It's easier for us to do than it is for any other industry because video games solved it ages ago. And then the other thing they did was games need you to learn how to play the game, right? So I put a new game in front of you and you go, I've never heard of this thing before. So it has to have this thing in front that takes you on a path to get you engaged in some way. So we're taking that methodology and putting it into biotech instruments and medical instruments to go like, there is a way to get people to learn complex systems, and it isn't teach them everything and then expect them to do it. It's teach them a bit, get them to do a bit, teach them a bit, get them to do it, because that's the way video games teach people. And that's what we're trying to bring over, a more sort of modern way of thinking about learning and training. But again, it always comes from what the video games industry teaches us. And I'll call it something else so people don't think I'm making them a video game, but fundamentally, the way to teach complex systems has already been done over here in the video game industry. We will just steal from it a bit.
So last few questions, I promise, and we'll let you go.
I've only got a sales meeting later on. I don't want to do it anyway.
For anyone who has an idea, and wants to turn into reality, into a business, have you got any advice for them?
Yeah, lots. But we want to sum it up in something easy. Is that you have to iterate quickly, right? So, and if an idea doesn't come to fruition, you need to use everything you learn from it to put it into the next thing, but you have to do that quite quick. To talk about video games again, that is the core fundamental of some of the biggest video games people will ever play, right? Microsoft has just bought, who did they just buy? Activision for the biggest deal of all time, right? So it's a $77 billion deal to buy, and it's the biggest acquisition of all time. This industry, people take it seriously. When they take it seriously, they learn a lot. One of the fundamentals of the way you make a game, right? Take that into how you make things. Like, because you think something works, understand that it might not work, and you change quickly and take on board the feedback to iterate it faster and make something else quicker. So, for example, in Envoke, we learned that one of the main bits of the platform, the remote demo tool, the bit where you can invite everyone in to look at the same tool, is the least used bit of the platform. So we went, okay, we need to put more focus and attention on the other areas, the bit that works on the website, the storyline making tool, and we need to pull from this bit and drag it over and not be trying to push it. We need to learn from it and go, there's a reason people don't use that, but let's steal from it and bring it over to the other bits. When you make things, when you sit there and try and make something, sometimes it won't work and it'll fail at it and you'll get pissed off about the whole thing. It's quicker to bin it off, start something over here again, and drag everything over that was good, and you end up with a better tool by doing that. That was the way I learned to do things anyway. It's like, be comfortable binning ideas off and taking what you needed from it for the thing you end up that works. Again, a really janky way of explaining it, but it's iterate quickly is like the best way to describe it. Be comfortable at failing, because you'll be more comfortable at calculating the risk. So if you make something and you go, this is the greatest idea in the world, be comfortable that it might not be, but you are on the path to making the greatest thing in the world by letting it die. Is that poetic and not rambling enough for you?
Yes, super poetic. Yeah.
There you go.
I love letting it die as well, actually. But yeah, no, but that does make complete sense. And I think it's something that I know I struggle with. And I was speaking to someone the other day who like started and sold like 4 businesses, something. But then he was like, but I have actually, he said he sold 4 businesses, but I've actually founded probably like 6, 7.
Yeah.
And he's like, they just fucking died.
They do, man. It's like superlative, like the video and the video games bit exists still to pump cash into Envoke while it gets the legs to breathe. And it's a great business, right? And it really is. At some point, the idea is Envoke becomes so big, it just engulfs all the superlative stuff as well. But it might never happen. By going for marketing and then going for training and maintenance after, it's like at some point, we'll just give the marketing bits away for free because the real benefit of the tools over here, it's not over here. So let's stop focusing our attention to what these guys need, because they're going to change their mind and things are going to change, but these guys won't. So you have to be comfortable just shifting. Like I said, calculating the risk. Going like, if I move this thing over in this direction, is that going to make any sense to anybody? Like when you make a video game, the reason it's called iterate quickly is like, build something, see if it works, and if it doesn't, then be comfortable to bin it off. And that happens on video games all the time. Like there's a huge, very famous game called Portal that started as something completely different before it ended up being the game it is, and the game it is now is massive. But they were comfortable at binning off the things that they originally wanted. So like, this is what works. And then they go out and take it to an audience, and the audience dictate what works and doesn't. And they shift it and bend it in a different direction. That's largely what Envoke has done for us. We started pushing it down this marketing path, like twisting it more towards a training and maintenance tool, and making it now for that audience rather than making it solely for the marketing audience, because that's what the market has dictated. It's not us going like, no, it's a marketing tool. It's like, no one gives a shit. Those guys need it. Make sure it goes in that direction.
Brilliant. Okay. Look, last question. Always like to end on this. Imagine it's your last day on Earth, and apart from being on this podcast, spending time with your family, whatever it may be, what would you be up to? What would you be doing?
Let me think. What would I do the last day on Earth? I'd eat a lot of food.
Okay, nice.
I think I would spend an awful lot of the day eating. And even though it is the last day on Earth, and you probably want to maximize the amount of time you get out of it, there is a beautiful feeling that you have waking up after a nap.
Yeah.
So you want to experience that one more time, right? So I'd eat enough food that would put me to sleep for an hour. So that nice feeling where you wake up after a nap.
You spend your last day napping.
It's bad, isn't it? Like a dog. I don't know. There's other, like, where would I want to be in the world is a different thing. I'd want to be in different places, right? But you want to bounce around. Rome is like, me and my wife lived in Rome for a year. I'd want to be there just eating in Rome, because there's nothing that makes you happier than just eating food in a beautiful place. But as I get older, the more food I eat, the more it just induces a nap anyway. So that if I'm going to spend my last day enjoying food and drink and conversations with people, it's going to have a nap at some point.
Yeah.
So if you want me to maximize the day so I can get like a full, as much as 24 hours out of it, you're going to have to take 2 hours off for snoozing.
Well, brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. It sounds like it's the start of something incredibly exciting. And yeah, it's been really fun talking to you.
Cool. Cheers, man. Thanks for having me on.
And that's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Anything we talked about will be linked in the show notes, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we'll catch you on the next one.